الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما. قال المصنف الإمام النووي رحمه الله تبارك وتعالى ونفعنا بعلمه في الدارين. قال وعن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه قال استأذنت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في العمرة فأذن لي وقال لا تنسانا يا أخي من دعائك، فقال كلمة ما يسرني أن لي بها الدنيا، وفي رواية وقال أشركنا يا أخي في دعائك. حديث صحيح رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. So continuing with the chapter of visiting the righteous and the pious and remaining in their company and seeking the well wishes and the good du'as of the pious people is a very important aspect of that whole process. And here we find the example of the Prophet ﷺ illustrating us as such. And this hadith of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that I sought permission from the Nabi alayhi salatu, the Prophet alayhi salatu, to go for Umrah, to perform Umrah. So we can also understand from that people, the Sahaba would not just go about the affairs of life without taking the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even in the case of Umrah. When we say, I'm going for Umrah, so we don't take anybody's advice, that's a righteous action, right? No. There might be something which is more prioritized. For example, when it's time for Salat, we don't need to seek anybody's permission or make mashwara with anyone. It's a closed chapter. But there are other issues which are righteous actions, but it's a question of prioritization. Maybe something is of a higher priority. Salahuddin Ayyubi, radiallahu anhu, one of the greatest conquerors in the history of mankind, and particularly in Islamic history, and who, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his tawfiq, stopped the onslaught of Genghis Khan and his hordes, and that whole Mongol onslaught. He didn't perform Hajj. In fact, he didn't have a house. His house was encampments. He was always in the path of Allah, engaged in jihad. And because of the priority of that campaign, he didn't have the wherewithal, and he didn't have the opportunity to perform Hajj. SubhanAllah. So here, Sayyidina Umar asks the Prophet ﷺ that I want permission to perform Hajj. So the Nabi ﷺ gave him permission, and also, and here's the connection to the chapter, La tansana ya ukhay min du'aik. So it's a beautiful, very, definitive way of request that the Rasulullah ﷺ said, yes, okay, fine. And don't forget us also. Don't forget us in your dua. So the Prophet ﷺ was seeking the dua of Sayyidina Umar. Whereas you would imagine it's the other way around, right? So even the Prophet ﷺ in his humility and teaching us as well, that the pious duas of all the pious people, have their due value, and they are to be requested. And the Prophet ﷺ himself requested the dua of Sayyidina Umar. And also he addressed him, Ya ukhay, not akhi. Ukhay is what we call in Arabic tasghir, my little beloved. And it's an endearment, actually. It's not making somebody small or something small generally, but here it is an endearment. When somebody has a very close affection and affinity with someone, then he would use this phrase. And in another riwayat, ashrikna, and make us partner in your du'as, in other words, remember us in your du'as as well. So this is also, and it is generally the custom of Muslims, and people know that, but it should reinforce this whole concept that we are requesting one another's du'a. And in fact, one of the du'as which is not rejected is the du'a of the Muslim for his brother or sister bil ghaib, in other words, who is not present. So when we're asking the du'a for somebody, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts that dua. Number one. Number two, The person who is making that dua, he's also, it's a win-win because he's getting the facilitation of the person he's making dua for. At the same time, there is an angel which is appointed. Nabi told us that is standing on the head of the person who makes dua. And when we make dua for our brothers and sisters, then that angel says, وَلَكَ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. And for you also the same. So the angel is making the dua for us that we're making for the others. So win, 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 and it goes on and on and on. It's totally win. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand and apply and benefit. Ameen. Tamami wa akhir da'wana.